Data is not reconciled. You can look at my tweet at Team Betancourt. You can see a picture of what the data looks like on a precinct level. It's not votes that they had. They may finally found all the equipment they were missing. They may have a total, but it's not broken down effectively into both party primaries. I used to be a primary director at one chance over 20 years ago, and there's no breakdowns yet. So the problem is that if you don't have data that makes sense, you can't measure and fix it. And right now we're looking at a situation where I've never seen this before. Al and I have been doing elections for a long time, and there's supposed to be a specific formula that they report, which is number of registered voters, provisional ballots, late absentees, etc. And they haven't turned those reports in yet.
So are you calling this a fraud election?
I'm calling it an election that's filled with election irregularities. See, throughout the whole debate on my audit bill and others, okay, and back as far back as October of 2020, I've been worrying about election irregularities in Harris County. So I don't call anything a fraud. It's October of 2020. I've been worrying about election irregularities in Harris County. So I don't call anything a fraud.
Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong. The election administrator is someone that is put into that position, it's approved, correct, by the committee. But you're part of that committee. I mean, Republicans and Democrats do have a voice.
Yes, I am now part of it. When she was hired, I wasn't county chair, but I will tell you in that 5-person commission or committee, our former chair, he voted against hiring her. And Harris Bennett, the tax assessor, Democrat, voted against hiring her. Lena, it's my understanding from conversations, is Lena Hidalgo pushed for her, someone with no experience, to run the elections in the 3rd largest county in the country.
And last night, Judge Hidalgo did provide us with a statement indicating that while there was some obviously some conversations regarding party politics at the state level, here at the local level, she said that it doesn't absolve what took place and that she's asking for, and I'm paraphrasing, but she's asking for an accounting of what happened here by all parties involved. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I'm an accountant, CPA. We need to, as the senator said, we need to investigate and figure out what the data shows. And we're in the process, and we actually have asked our voters and our precinct judge, presiding judges, anyone. We've got an election hotline, 512-999-0117. So we're trying to gather that data so we can assess how substantive all these issues are as it relates not to the equipment, but to the actual votes counted, and how pervasive this problem was due to Isabel Longoria's ineptness.
And I know that another lawsuit is likely. Would anyone like to speak on that?
I've asked our attorneys to investigate all legal actions and others that we can potentially pursue. The reality is there is another election the first part of May that's a local election across the county. The reality is May 24th, both parties have a primary runoff. And the reality is we're going to have the largest election for a midterm come November. We know both sides are stirred up, and if these problems are not solved, where are we going to be? I mean, people go out and vote, and we were really pleased with the turnout from Republicans. We had 300 people standing in line that had come to the poll, one of our polls at 7 o'clock. They left at 11 o'clock because they care enough to vote. Where are we going to be in November if these aren't addressed?
Have you reached out to the other members of this committee and expressed to them what you're seeing at this news conference?
I have been having conversations off and on with my counterpart in the Democrat Party. And on these conference calls, he's expressed real concern, and they had frustration. And you can understand why both parties had judges that said, I can't assume the risk and run something that you know, I don't have the equipment, I don't have the proper ballot paper. I think a bipartisan approach was that we both recognize there's serious issues there.
I want to also address 20 polling places from the Republican Party didn't have judges according to the numbers that Ms. Longoria gave yesterday. 20 of them didn't have judges, and 12 Democratic polling places also didn't have judges. Democrats and Republicans yesterday talked to me about the fact that the Democrat says it because of COVID and because of the fear that these judges have about the consequences of any little mistake because of SB1, right? And then Republicans say that the reason they didn't have him is because the parties didn't get together and agreed on having joint elections. Which one is which? What happened?
So I can't speak for the Democrat Party and those presiding judges, but the bipartisan approach, which we found out where these locations were late Monday night, is that we asked our presiding judges to cover and try to open up both polls. And both parties stepped up. Some of our presiding judges, Democrat and Republican, said, you know, I just don't have enough clerks. It's the last moment. This is not about SB1. This is a management or lack of management problem. You know, you just don't try to run an election for the third largest county this way. Yes, the Republican Party, because historically we have said we will share the location, but we want to run our own primary. And I think this is further proof of why we want to run our own primary. In terms of the positions and the empty spots, I will tell you there's been massive problems for months now. We've had a shared document that the county, the Democrat Party, and we've been staffing those locations. And I spent many hours Friday night and Saturday morning doing a reconciliation between what they were showing and what we had in terms of staffing. They had double booked people that we had filled months ago. So we said, move them to the 10 spots that were missing. They didn't do that. We had people showing up that both parties thought that they were, I mean, both of who they assigned and who we assigned, we thought that they were both going to be, you know, they were like, who's supposed to be responsible? They sent people that we had assigned home. So I don't know how good that number is. If they had just done what I asked them to do Saturday morning, I don't think we would have had, from our standpoint, that kind of problem.
It's either incompetency or malice. Logic says it's likely incompetency. If it's incompetency, of course, the county needs to get rid of the election administrator. Why? Because they'd be accountable to the voters. Number two, though, speaking of staffing, I've heard multiple reports of people calling, even a few days before the election, asking if they needed to move volunteers, only to be turned away to say that they had enough. And now, though, then the county wants to blame it on staffing when it's their fault that they're understaffed.
Go over how far this goes back to
Yeah. Well, but the rule, again, just to help repeat it for those, is that beginning in 1963, so in 1951 it was 48 hours, and in 1963 it became that the delivery must be done within 24 hours of the closing of the polls. Same year, 1963. The laws require that after the polls have closed, vote counting shall be conducted continuously until every ballot has been counted. This is nothing new. Again, it's been the law before any of us were even old enough to be voters. They should have followed the law. It's really simple. In fact, after SB1, we gave guidance to the Secretary of State's office to come out with even more checklists to make it even easier to do. All they have to do is follow the checklist, follow the rules. Like Oliver's shaking his head, like we made it even easier to do. How come other large counties didn't have this problem? Again, it's either incompetency or malice. Logic says it's incompetency. I hope it's not malice.
So let me point out one other thing, and my primary director mentioned it. This shared document that we were all working from, we found out Friday that they had quit using it 3 weeks before, and they continued to fill spots without telling us. So we're running around trying to fill spots, and they are filling spots. I mean, it was total chaos, and no wonder people are frustrated. I went to my poll Saturday or Tuesday morning, the days were running together at 7 o'clock. I find out that the Democrats, that the Republican judge they said had resigned. They weren't on the list. We found out yesterday that they told our presiding judge that she couldn't be the judge there. She had to be someplace else and be a clerk. These are the problems that we were addressing. Yeah.
While you mentioned irregularities, right? I don't think there's a body out there, or is there a body statewide that can come in and examine to see what's really going on? Is that on Secretary of State? Is it on the Attorney General? Who can come in here and get to the bottom of what really happened?
There's two paths if there's been criminal violations. The Attorney General can look at proceedings either in this county or adjacent counties. When you look at the civil liability of all this, the Secretary of State has already initiated a phase 1 audit, limited audit that's already been completed, and they're in the process of requesting information on a phase 2 audit. I know I'm going to be recommending that this election also be part of that discussion that the Secretary of State has already initiated by requesting open records, etc. Mario, you've hit on the point. There are 5 people on that board that select the elections administrator. My tweet was that all 5 of them, okay? Because you've got 2 party chairs, you've got 2 Democrat elected officials, and then you've got the county judge, who's the one who made these appointments of Elizabeth Longoria. And 4 of those have to vote to get rid of her. And after what I've seen here today, upsize this problem by hundreds of thousands of more votes on election day. We can't afford that risk. And that's why I'm saying, at least I tweeted yesterday, give it back to the elected officials. They happen to be Democrats, and I know I'm a Republican, but I'm looking at any solution that can be done before November to keep us from having an election catastrophe that will be the largest in the country.
Other questions? Thank you all. Thank you for coming on a short notice, and I'm sure we will be having many more discussions as we move through this election year. And feel free, Genevieve Carter is our comms director. If you have any questions, feel free.